Welcome to Building Business with Soul with Coach Arliss. In this show, we will dive into the soulful approach to business, get nerdy with some brain science, and learn the nuts and bolts of how business owners build success through their passion. Let's get started with one round of box breathing so that we can get centered and focused. We will breathe in for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, and breathe out for a count of 4. Let's go ahead and begin. Breathing in for 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 1, 2, 3, 4. And breathe out for 1, 2, 3, 4. Great job getting focused. Today, we are going to be diving into giving impactful presentations. Speaking in front of an audience could be something that is pretty scary for people to take on. And there are lots of things that we can do to make sure that when we do that, it's a little less scary for us and we get to have a greater impact on our audience. So I want you to think for a minute and ask yourself, what is your biggest fear when it comes to public speaking? Is it a fear of tripping over a word or making a misstep? Maybe it's a fear of visibility and being seen. Maybe it's a fear that you're going to get up there and have nothing to say. Well, once we get realistic and know what our fear is, then we can start to work on it. And the truth is that our brain doesn't know the difference between excitement and nervousness. So one of the things that you can do is when you are feeling that anxiety that comes up, which even comes up for me, and I speak multiple times a week, tell yourself that you're excited to be there, that you're excited to be presenting to the people in front of you. Another thing that I like to do in order to shake off those nerves is to think about impacting just one person. There's at least one person in that audience that needs to hear your message. What positive impact can you imagine having on their life if they hear your message that day? And then focus on speaking to that one person. Okay, so let's dive into the nuts and bolts of how to create a really impactful presentation. Well, one of the biggest ways to do that is through the power of storytelling. And if you are looking for a great book on storytelling and how that can impact speaking and marketing and branding, I highly recommend Building a Story Brand. It's excellent, and it really takes you through the different steps of creating that story arc where your client or customer is the hero. That's right. It's not you. Your client or customer is the hero. So when we have a story, we have the introduction, we have the problem that happened, right? Then we have what you did to create the shift, or the product or service or client did to create the shift. And then we have the solution afterward. When we are structuring how much time and effort we put towards each one, remember that we want to put about 45% of our time towards the problem and about 45% of our time towards the solution, and a very small amount of time towards what happened to make that shift. People want to know what outcomes happened and all of those things. And what happens when you leave out the whole detail of what happened to create the shift, people get curious and they'll come ask you for more information on that. Also, when you're structuring your talk, I highly recommend that you only do about 100 words per minute maximum. This will allow you to be able to take pauses, have audience engagement, and show graphics or pictures and really take people on that journey without feeling rushed. In fact, some of the time I will structure talks where it's actually less words per minute than that. So as you're going through and thinking about structuring your talk, think about what is the way that you want your audience to walk away from. If you were polling people as they were going out the doors whether they're virtual doors or in-person doors, and asking them, hey, what did you get from today's talk today? You want to have one clear, concise message so that people can be able to state that and hold on to that while you're giving your presentation. Also think about that one person. What are the characteristics of that one person that you're trying to reach? And what sets them apart from other people? And how is your talk going to positively impact them? You also want to consider who's the hero, villain, and supporting characters in your story. So the hero is your client or customers. The villain is whatever problem is getting solved. And then you're one of the guiding characters, kind of like Gandalf in The Hobbit, or, what's his name? Oh, I can't think of his name. But anyway, think of Gandalf in The Hobbit. That's you. And then what are the other supporting characters to your story? It might be an actual person, but it could be an app or a piece of software or other things that came in to support your client or customer. And then I want you to think of what outcomes are you celebrating at the end? And do they connect to that one central takeaway message? When I'm creating a talk, I want to create a talk that is going to be able to translate and resonate with every personality type that's sitting there in the audience. And I love to use the DISC personality type to kind of model my talk after. So there's the D's, the I's, the S, and the C's. And go check out that the DISC personality type, and maybe even take the test to see what personality type you are, because this can help you understand better how to make sure that you're taking those audience members into consideration, and just how to communicate with people. Okay, so on the DISC personality type, the D's want the information right now. Yesterday would be preferred, and they want to know a roadmap. They want to know that their time is going to be honored, and that we're going to get to the point, and that they can clearly understand what is happening each step along the way. The I's are the influencers. They want interaction. So this is where you get to say, show of hands, who has done, or let's do a call and response, or ask them to do some kind of interaction or activity during your talk. I frequently ask people to close their eyes and imagine that they have their own personal cheerleader cheering for them. I's love interaction, and it will really inspire them to want to be active and participating in your presentation. S's, the sensing individuals, are really enjoying the story. So that whole story arc that you're going to create with the heroes and the villains and the supporting characters, that story arc is really for the S's. And then for the C's, these individuals really want the facts and figures. So this is where I show some of my neuroscience background, and I'll talk about, the fact that we have over 60,000 thoughts in a day, and 80% are negative, and this is how it biochemically changes our cells and things like that. So if you can hit all of these different personality types in your presentation, make sure that you have a roadmap, that you have a clear, identifiable message, that you're going to stay on time in your presentation, have interaction in your presentation for the I's, have a wonderful story, and then also throw in some facts and figures. This can really incorporate all the personalities in your audience. Okay, let's talk about body language. When we are on the virtual stage or on the in-person stage, it's important that we have open, inviting body language that does not signal to our audience that we are nervous or that we're upset, or in that sort of thing. So having palms up, having the chest open, having our hand gestures, make sure that they are above the Zoom line. If we're in person, we want to have our hand gestures above our elbows, if that's possible. We also want to make sure that we are standing and facing the audience in a way that portrays that we are open to conversation, because that's what we're having. Even though we're presenting, we're still having a conversation with the audience. Things that might indicate that you look nervous are crossed arms, hands in the pockets, hands behind the back, hands that are shielding your lower area of your body. All of those might indicate nervousness or unease. Looking down or away can also do that. Making eye contact is really important. If you are looking to do that more in Zoom, put your camera, put your Zoom screen right up by your camera, and that will help you make better eye contact in Zoom. So all of these things help us to have our audience feel at ease when we are giving a presentation with them. Another thing to consider when you're in person is pacing the stage. So pacing the stage is really easy to do. I pretty much did that at a recent talk I did. I was so excited to be giving the talk that I ended up pacing the stage. And that can be an indication that somebody is really excited or nervous. And that can also be uncomfortable for the audience. So that is something I'm personally working on being more aware of in my future presentations. Okay, so we've talked about how we want to have a storyline, how we want to make sure that we're within the time that's allotted to us, being able to reach the personality types of the people in the audience. And we've talked about the ways that we can use our body to be more open and inviting to our audience. One of the things that I really love to do when I'm doing a presentation is to open and end with a question. And typically this is tied to the central message that I want everybody to remember. And typically the question in the beginning and the question at the ending are almost identical, or maybe very similar. So for instance, one of the very first speeches that I gave, I started with, who was the love of your life and how long would it take you to list yourself? That was my opening question. So at the end of my speech, I said, now who was the love of your life? And can you see that it is yourself? So it tied into my central message that we are each the love of our lives. And it allowed the people to connect the beginning to the end. You can also connect the beginning to the end using a story. So maybe you start your talk with a story, but you don't share the ending. And then you finish your talk with that same story. Anytime that you can create that full circle experience for your audience, it will give them a sense of completion and a sense that they understand what happened during that presentation. So starting and ending with a question or a story really allows for the audience to feel that connection. And it can be a way of wrapping things up kind of like in a bow. It's really a way of giving a presentation that gift feeling. You might be wondering, okay, so Arliss, I know how you want me to create the story and how you want me to begin and end my presentation and how I can stay on track with time, but what are all those little tiny things that I could do to improve my presentation abilities? Let's dive into those. Number one, practice, practice, practice. And there's a lot of different ways to practice. So how can we practice? One of the ways that I like to practice is to voice record myself, reading off my presentation and then listening to it back. This can help my brain get to know the words that I want to say and in what order, and kind of create a brain muscle memory. Another way to do this is to just read your presentation, and you don't have to do it in the same timing that you're going to on the day of presentation. You can actually read it really rapidly, and that will also help you create that muscle memory feel. One of the other ways that I like to practice my presentations is if I know that I have other talks coming up, they may be different lengths of time or on slightly different subjects, I will augment the big talk that I'm prepping for to fit that topic and that time, and I will practice doing it that way. So any type of way that you can practice is really great. Another tool to use is to record yourself on something like Zoom and then watch yourself back and see if you gave the presentation the way that you wanted to, and if your body movements and your sound projection and your vocal variety were all right where you want it to be. I know that it can be a little bit scary to watch yourself back, and it's a great learning tool. Another way to improve your presentation ability is to act like the host whenever you're presenting at an event. So get there early, welcome people in, just welcome them and act like that host. It will allow you to feel a little bit more comfortable, like you have a connection to the audience, and it will make your audience feel more positively to you because you just welcome them to be there. And now they get to see you on stage. So anytime that you can welcome your audience in and arrive early and act like the host, it can allow you to shake off some of those nerves and to feel a little bit more comfortable. Another way to increase your or improve your presentation ability is to have yourself visualize yourself giving your presentation. So walk through your presentation in your mind from the time that you take that stage, whether it's on Zoom or in person, to when you're done and you get that standing ovation. And feel it going through your body as you're doing that visualization. You're just warming your brain up to the idea that you're doing this. You're becoming more comfortable with it. And you might actually see ways that you can improve the presentation by practicing it in your mind. One of the things that is really impactful in presentations is practicing the pause. So when we practice the pause, we give emphasis to something. We allow our audience time to process what we're saying. And it's something that we naturally do in conversation. So when we practice the pause, it kind of slows things down a little bit and allows us to have variety in our speed in other places in our presentation. So if we're saying, oh my gosh, and then they were running to catch the train and they didn't know if they were going to make it and they got there right on time. And they felt so much better, right? So I used my speed in the way I was talking to give the energy of the story I was telling, right? So when I was saying they were running to get there, I was talking faster and faster and faster. And then I paused and I said, and they got there and they felt so much calmer when they were there. So when we use the pause, we can really put emphasis on things and take our audience on the journey. One thing that people don't always consider is whether their face is matching the words that they are saying or the emotions that they are conveying in their presentation. So if you're talking about something sad, it's probably not appropriate to have a huge smile on your face. Just like when you're talking about something that's really happy and joyful, it's probably not appropriate to look scared or sad or angry. So this is one of the ways that recording yourself and watching yourself back can really help, because you can look at your face and see if you're conveying that emotion that you're talking about or describing in your face as you're saying it. And if not, that's an area that you can change up to be better matching with the story that you're telling. Another way to improve your presentation skills is audience engagement. And we talked about how this is so important for the eyes in the room. We want to ask them to share their experience, to, if you're in mute or in Zoom, unmute and put things and share things out or put things into the chat. Express an emoji on mute or on Zoom and do those different types of things. In person, you can have people raise their hands or share or call a response. You can ask them to stand up or sit down and all of these different things. Ways to engage your audience are so important because it makes them feel like they are part of the experience, and it really allows them to feel that connection with you as the speaker. We want to keep our message really simple so that people aren't wondering later, oh, I wonder what she said. It was so amazing. And we also don't want to try to cram too many things into our presentations. That way people can feel like they're able to grasp what we're talking about. I also want to remind you that as you're presenting, to make sure that you have enough food and hydration. We don't want any low blood sugar or dehydration to get in the way of you having that amazing presentation. It's also good to remember that you're human, and your humanness is the thing that is your superpower and sets you apart from other humans, because you're human in a way that other people aren't. The more that you can embrace your humanness and not find it challenging and not get stumbled by it, the easier it will be for you to feel confident speaking. I tripped over my words a few times in the presentation that you heard today. I said the wrong word a couple of times and corrected myself. I didn't allow that to be a huge roadblock to continuing on with my presentation, because guess what? I'm human just like you. And so the more that we can embrace our humanity, the more it'll allow us to go through our presentations without feeling as nervous or frustrated with ourselves when things don't work out exactly perfectly, when perfect really isn't possible. And realize that you are speaking to an audience of other humans who would much rather be in the audience than speaking on that stage. And they see what you're doing as something that's pretty amazing. Remember that your audience wants you to succeed. They want you to give an amazing talk. They want to be right there with you. They want to celebrate with you. They're not looking for you to fail. They're looking for you to succeed. So embrace that as you take the next stage. Today, I hope you take a moment to recognize at least one amazing thing about yourself that you're doing to support yourself in your life and your business. Thank you for joining me, Coach Arliss, on Building Business with Soul. If you'd like to learn more about how I support entrepreneurs, please check out my website, soullutions.com. That's SOULLUTIONS.com. Join me next week when we dive into more soulful approaches to business.